Hello, AP Psychology. We've made it to page 4. This is the last section of Unit 1, Ethics. So something that took us a month to get through, we're going through in a few days. But again, this is review, so hopefully you're not totally overwhelmed, and a lot of this, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. All right, so what are ethics? So the idea is ethics. We'll talk about ethics and morals real quick. Morals are your personal belief system of what you believe is right from wrong. Ethics is what we as a society have deemed is right from wrong. So when you are conducting an experiment, you want to make sure that it is humane and that it is ethical. So some of the issues that may arise in an experiment is it okay to expose groups to pain, trauma, or discomfort? The answer is no. I think for pain and trauma, definitely a hard no on that one. But discomfort is a little bit more ambiguous as to what that means. I'm mildly obsessed. I'm bringing it up again. That show 100 Humans. They actually torture the some of the folks. I mean, the torture isn't painful. I don't think it'll be traumatic for the people involved, but they were definitely uncomfortable. They were sleep deprived. So, you have to dabble in those questions about. I think pain and trauma are pretty clear, but discomfort is a little bit ambiguous. Is it okay to conduct an experiment on children even with parental consent? I mean, I don't know. When we talk about developmental psychology, you really do have to have some sort of like experiment with the kids. Maybe it's just a naturalistic observation, but um, we do look to children to come up with answers. And then finally, can you conduct experiments with animals? Um, as we're going to see in some of the slides, one of the things that you need in order for your experiment to be conducted ethically is consent. Can the animal give you consent? And they're like, yeah, sure, you could do X, Y, and Z on me. And if they can't, does it then deem that all experiments on animals are unethical? I don't know. But since we have these issues, we also have governments and universities that have established regulations for experiments. Okay, so here are the groups that have been created. So these institutions and entities that determine protocols for whether or not your experiment is ethical. So we have the American Psychological Association, the APA, and the British Psychological Society, the BPS. They determine ethics and procedures and require compliance for any prospective experiment. There are federal regulations. Um, Piece of legislation dictate that interactions of medical information, the HIPAA privacy rule requires that physicians keep patient information confidential. So we spoke about this before, but what the HIPAA privacy rule is that folks can't get access to your medical history and information. So if you have a note from your doctor for work that says that you need to be out for 10 days, your work can't then ask you, well, why? That's part of your HIPAA privacy rule. You you have rights. People can't just know your medical history. That's why when we just talked in the last unit about pleading insanity, there's like a fine line there. Well, you're protected by HIPAA. Um, I don't, can people know that about you, that you're pleading insane, etc. Then there are universities, so local institution review boards. They screen research proposals and safeguard participants' well-being at each institution, and their policies adhere to the APA, the BPS, and the federal government. So if you're an undergrad student and you are a psychology major, there's a very good likelihood that you will conduct an experiment. So you will come up with your thesis, your hypothesis, um, and sorry, and you're gonna show all of your information, all of your stuff that you want to do to the board, and then they will use the regs that have been put in place by the AP and the BPS rather, to tell you if your experiment meets ethical requirements. And then there is the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, a federally mandated committee in the United States that oversees institutions that use animals. Every institution that uses animals is for federally funded laboratory research must have an IACUC. Does that mean that if it's not federally funded, they could just start doing stuff on animals? I don't really know. But animals do have rights, and there is a committee to oversee experiments to make sure that they are being treated. All right, so even before you go to the boards, whichever it is, even if you're college or you're doing this through the government, these are the four basic rules. I mean, there's additional requirements, but this is if you're meeting these four things, you're probably ethical. You're probably okay. So obtain informed consent. The folks involved in your experiment need to say, I'm okay with this. They need to know that they're being part of something. They need to sign off. Protect from physical harm or discomfort. Again, that word discomfort's a little bit ambiguous, but you can't hurt people. Okay. Keep information about the participants confidential. That can't pop up later on in life. It's again a HIPAA violation among other things. And then you have to debrief the person afterwards. You got to tell them what that experiment was for, why they do it, what was the purposes of it. So the person needs to give consent. They need to come out of this okay. You can't give this information to other folks, and you need to talk to your participants when this is all done. All right, so that brings us to the end of Unit 1 review. I hope that was helpful. Please let me know if there are any components to this unit that are still a little bit confusing to you. And again, we made it through Unit 1.